Veil of dawn, the doors of night, forbidden meeting. The embassy's crystalline doors opened like a slow inhale. Jake had learned the corridors by muscle memory, where the solar glass made a spill of blue on the floor, where the air vibrated faintly from the shield coils, where the sentry's eyes never quite blinked. Avoid the royal wing. Avoid the lounge at dusk. Avoid the places where rumor said Princess Sarah walked as if the night itself kept pace at her heels. He failed tonight, deliberately, maybe. He would have called it a routing check. He would have said the energy grid's hum read wrong near the throne room and that the oscillation worried him. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. He wanted to see her. Sarah sat not on a throne but within a faceted meditation cradle. Comet glass sculpted to cradle Valyrian bodies. 7 feet of quiet majesty when she rose, skin that shimmered with a nearness to starlight, eyes that shifted like dawn through mist. "This is the human engineer," someone announced. Jake bowed. Do not look long. Do not smell the ozone and cold sweet perfume of her kind. Do not think about how the court said one sip of human warmth could turn a Valyrian mind to ruin. Sarah smiled, small, disciplined, almost kind. "You hear the grid singing, Engineer Morrison?" He did. He always did. "The frequency drifted at 22 past. It'll trip the dampers if we don't reroute." She watched him as he worked. He pretended not to notice the way the room seemed to dim around her, as if the world respected the night when it moved. Don't reach for mystery like it's safe, he warned himself. This was the moment. He could lie, say he felt nothing, or he could speak the truth and end his career. He soldered, sealed, and set the fail-safe. "Highness, if you walk the Eastern Gallery at dusk, the Harmonic might." "I do," she said, surprised into a softer voice. "Thank you." When he left, the corridors felt different. The doors of night had opened, just enough for a human to catch the scent of wildfire beyond the laws. Novaterra's morning wore a pale orange sky and the faithful hum of the grid. Domes glittered like dew-flecked quartz, solar towers drank their fill, and mechanical birds mapped the winds with gentle clicks. Jake poured synthetic coffee in his one-room flat and told himself ordinary was good. Ordinary meant safety, meant living within margins. Yet even here, the grid sang in his bones. Even here he felt watched, by possibility, by something that had noticed him the moment he met Sarah's eyes. The summons arrived at noon. "Engineer Morrison, report to the East Gallery," read the message, formal and neutral. He touched the metal tube in his pocket, his secret. A palm-sized puzzle of etched alloy and memory circuits he'd tuned to listen beyond human bandwidths. No one knew he carried it through security. No one knew it vibrated on nights when the stars arranged themselves into patterns that didn't belong to this sky. The princess waited at the balustrade, twin moons hung like pearls in a bowl of light. "Walk with me," she said, and the guards pretended to study the floor. He walked. He should not walk. "They tell me," she said, "humans smell roses to calm their hearts." "We do," he said, "but the roses on Novaterra are all glass." She almost laughed. Almost. "You repaired the resonance without looking at the schematics." He could lie. He didn't. "I listen. To the grid, to what moves through it." The princess's gaze turned inland towards the colony. "Our accords with your council forbid attachment. Affection becomes a lever. Levers break kingdoms." "Understood," he said. It wasn't. It was a rule, and rules rarely cared about the biology of longing. He felt the cube thrum, a soft pulse that meant, what? A signal. Not the first and not the last. Something out there mapped itself toward him, toward them. "Engineer," she said, voice quiet. "My name is Sarah, at least when we're not watched." "Jake," he said. It left his mouth like a promise. "Do not promise," he warned himself. Promises thread through the necks of men like silk, soft, bright, and choking. The Valyrian court gathered under a ceiling of frosted crystal that made stars out of lamp flame. Queen Valina wore a collar of nightstone that turned her throat into an eclipse. Lord Rezek performed his usual slow smile. "Your Majesty, the human liaison program drifts into sentiment. Our princess walks the galleries with an engineer." "A system requires maintenance," Sarah said. "So does an alliance." Rezek's glance cut toward Jake. "And what would a human do when a princess is hungry?" Jake held the stare. He could do fear like a professional, but he would not perform it for Rezek. He'd trust her discipline. Rezek's tongue pressed against a canine in something like a private joke. "Discipline breaks when blood sings." Valyna lifted a hand. Silence. We do not discuss hunger in public. Then to Jake, kind almost. Engineer Morrison, walk with my daughter at dusk if necessary, but remember, no accord survives scandal. Later, in a corridor of shadowed mirrors, Sarah spoke without looking at him. Rezik collects grief. He spends it like coin. And you? I collect oaths, she said. They weigh less, until they don't. He almost told her about the cube then. Instead he said, if there's a way through, I'll find it. And if there isn't, then I'll make one. She looked at him for that, truly looked. A princess measuring a risk, a woman measuring a heart. Hunger is a word, she told herself. A law is a wall, but walls sometimes keep in the wrong things. The colony's alarms coughed once and died. Brownout. Distant murmurs rose. Jake slid the cube onto the console and the room changed. Lines of light, a breathing lattice, a star map that kept rearranging itself as if someone else were thinking with him. Sarah stood closer than rules allowed. The air around her held that cold, sweet scent again. Frost and something floral that wasn't a flower. He shouldn't be cataloging her. He did it anyway. Dangerous, precise, the way an engineer falls in love. It's aware, Jake said, not alive, but responsive. To you? She asked. To us, to the way we solve problems. Her hand hovered over the light. The map shifted, orienting to her like a sunflower. He forgot to breathe. Don't, she whispered. What? Don't look at me like I'm a sunrise you can keep. And then softer, almost apologetic. I don't eat humans, Jake. I don't even sip, I won't. I didn't ask you to. You will, the thought answered, unspooling behind his ribs. Not for pleasure, for years, for mercy. He flinched from his own future. They navigated a minor meteor squall that night, the cube humming in duet with the shield coils. Sarah's voice turned command into music. Crews obeyed as if their hands had always remembered how. When the last spark died against the dome, a cheer rose and rolled like surf. Jake looked at her in the dark that followed. She looked back. This is a problem, he told himself. And then, good, at least it's honest. Rules became habits, habits became rituals. They walked the Eastern Gallery at dusk and discussed energy, ethics, and how to survive wanting something you must not touch. Jake dated other people. He tried to. It felt like practicing a language that never belonged in his mouth. He learned court protocol, learned where to stand so Rezik's whispers slid off like rain. He asked once, carefully, is turning always a violation? It's a covenant, Sarah said. It binds the thirst to the beloved. It amplifies what's already inside. If I turned you, your patience would become winter. Your loyalty would become iron. Your anger, what little you let yourself have, would become a storm that never stops. Sounds like warning and praise. It is, she said, and cost. You would bury sunlight for the rest of your nights. The cube continued to answer the sky. It built them a map, a braided path through energy fields to a place of crystalline engines that sang like whales in a black sea. Queen Valyna watched with sharp mercy. Rezik watched with teeth. Jake begged for the first time at the end of the second year, the way a man begs for more time with what he loves. If battle comes, if I'm dying, don't let me go, turn me. Sarah shook her head. If you love me, you will let me grieve you as a man, not keep you as a miracle. Some loves become prisons painted white. He swallowed the ache. He told himself, I can bear mortality. He lied. He practiced the lie until it fit, the way armor eventually shapes the body that wears it. A saboteur cracked Western shields, not a breach, but a bruise. Rezik made a theater of it. Incompetence or compromise, he purred to the council. Either the human is careless, or the princess is compromised. Valyna's gaze remained calm. Name your evidence, minister. I name risk, he said smoothly, and propose the ordeals of dawn. Let the princess stand bare to first light under witness, a symbol of restraint. Let the human walk the night corridor alone. If either fails, the liaison ends. A murmur crawled through the chamber. Sarah's jaw hardened. I will not be turned into spectacle. Valyna's look cut sideways. A private apology, a sovereign necessity. Symbols bind empires, Sarah. Jake spoke because silence would cost more. I'll walk the corridor. Sarah turned to him, eyes like storm glass. No. He had already done the math. I can map the vents. The cube will listen to the dampers. I'll be fine. This was the moment. He could tell her he was afraid. He could ask her to defy her mother, her nation, her law, and flee. Together then, he said instead, because some lies look like courage. We do hard things. We don't make them alone. She squeezed his hand once, quick and fierce, beneath the table where no one could see. Lovers in a court of knives learn to hold hands in shadows. Dawn pulled a blade across the mountains. In the courtyard, Sarah stood in a circle of warding sigils, sleeves rolled to bare the veins where hunger wrote its soft equations. The light hurt, it always did, but she held still, elegant in pain. The court watched. Rezek smiled as if sipping something sweet. Deep under the embassy, Jake entered the night corridor with only a handlight and the cube. Temperature drop. Pressure rise. The sound of ancient machinery moving like a sleeping animal. He spoke to the dark like a colleague. I get it. You want to be seen. The cube brightened, mapping vents and pitfalls with slender filaments of light. Halfway through, the corridor inhaled. The floor punched out a breath later. He jumped, caught a crossbeam, slammed into a strut, and dangled over black. This is how men die in stories like this. Clever, valiant, and alone. He wanted, suddenly absurdly, to be angry. At the court, at the laws, at the years of not touching. He was allowed, he decided. He pushed the anger where it belonged, into motion. He jammed the cube into a seam and forced it to speak to the corridor in the only language machines respect: emergency. The floor sealed under him. He crawled to the far door on knees that shook and laughed once. A broken little sound. Upstairs, Sarah knelt at last, not from failure but from a calculus of pain correctly solved. The court saw what it had demanded, a princess who would bleed for the accords and not bite a single throat to ease it. Valyrian rose. The ordeals conclude. Rezek opened his mouth, perhaps to praise, perhaps to poison, but a chime cut the room. War notes. The grid bucked like a frightened animal. They've come, Valyrian said, eyes narrowing. Whoever has been echoing our map. Ships like knives unfolded from the dark and set themselves around Novaterra with the patience of spiders. Not invaders, harvesters. They fed on energy, on light. The domes stuttered, the towers dimmed. Jake ran to the control hall. We can harmonize at a frequency that starves them. It'll mean a brownout. Do it, Valyrian said without ceremony. Sarah was already moving among crews, lending her presence like gravity. The cube sang, higher, desperate. The alien lattice beyond the system answered, a wail cry over cold oceans. Jake tuned, retuned, cut power, shunted it back, bled off heat. A strike cut through the wall like a silent scream. Metal peeled. The room turned into force and fragments. Jake threw himself at the console to protect the cube and felt something hit him that made the world go thin at the edges. He was on the floor. He knew that. He felt Sarah before he saw her. Ice and star perfume, terror caged in discipline. She pressed her palm against his chest and the pressure went oddly far away. Stay, she said, command and plea braided. Do you hear me? Stay. He tried to say yes, but the word fell apart at his teeth. His blood made a map on the deck. This is it, he thought. This is the moment. Beg. He didn't want to die, pragmatic and unromantic as it sounded. He wanted to keep walking the Eastern Gallery and arguing about ethics at midnight. He wanted to see if the map led to anything like a home. Sarah, he said, or thought he did. Please. She had promised herself she would never turn him. Promises are easy when no one is dying. Queen Valyrian knelt across from her, ancient sorrow in her eyes. Daughter. I can save him, Sarah said. I can. I know the cost. Valyrian's jaw worked. Then own it. Not for the court, for yourself. Rezek, from a safe distance, watched the entire ruin with a hunger of his own. If the princess broke law, 1,000 levers bloomed. Sarah leaned closer until her hair curtained them. Jake, look at me. The world narrowed to her voice. I didn't want this, she said. I wanted to love you in daylight until daylight was done, but I won't let you go on a technicality. He laughed again, more breath than sound. Technicality. Shh, she said, and then she was all fang and mercy. Her mouth at his throat wasn't a wound, it was a door. Cold, then a heat like clean alcohol, then a sweetness that rewired the room into edges and lights and the shape of her hand around his life. This is a covenant. Some part of him remembered. It binds thirst to the beloved. He fell, not down, but inward, through a winter orchard lit by moons. Snow made no sound under his boots. In the distance, the grid sang. In the near distance, Sarah's hunger sang too, matched, measured, held within railings she'd built over centuries. Discipline turned feral and did not break. He had never loved anyone more. He drank when she opened her wrist. The first drop was language, the second was law, the third was something like laughter under ice. He felt his heartbeat stutter, then learn a different tempo. The air smelled like metal and rain. Light acquired edges he hadn't known it owned. And then, quiet. A new quiet. A quiet he could live inside without getting lonely. He opened his eyes to find Sarah's, wide and wet and furious with love, inches away. Blood slicked her lip. She didn't lick it away. A vow. "You'll hate me," she whispered. "One night, you'll hate me." He thought about it, honest as he could be while new senses unspooled. "Maybe," he said, "but not tonight." She exhaled a laugh that cracked around the edges and kissed his forehead with a care that broke him more than anything else had. Behind them, the battle still burned. "Can you stand?" she asked. He stood. The world stood with him. They drove the harvesters off with a harmonic that tasted like tin and lightning. The dome survived. The court reconvened in scorched regalia. Rezek rose, wearing solemnity like cologne. "We must address the violation." Valyria didn't blink. "We address survival. You're welcome." Rezek bowed like a snake discovering posture. "A turned human is a precedent. A living one," Sarah said. "My choice." Eyes swung to Jake. He caught himself reading the room at a new frame rate. Micro-twitches, heartbeat cadence, the small moment when a guard shifted weight because the sound of Rezek's voice made his muscles bristle. Predators read herds. He shuddered, not entirely from disgust. "Minister," Jake said, polite enough to sting, "if you'd like me dead for policy, say it plainly and let the court remember." A low murmur. Rezek's smile thinned. "I want what the law wants, stability." "Then bind me," Jake said, turning to Valyria. He surprised himself, Sarah, maybe even the night. "Name the service. I'll serve as envoy where sunlight fails. I'll walk corridors you can't ask your living men to walk. I'll be the precedent that keeps others from paying this cost lightly." Sarah's fingers touched his. One brush, one breath. He wanted. He could have her right now, in every way that word meant. He didn't look at her because self-mastery is a gift lovers give each other in public. Valyria considered. "An emissary to the crystalline engines," she said. "Sworn to both crowns, you will map what the cube offers and bring back what does not corrupt us. You will not turn others. You will not feed in the court. You will not require my daughter's blood more than the covenant demands." Jake heard the sharp inhale from Sarah's throat. Relief and pain braided. He bowed. "Done." Rezek opened his mouth, then closed it. Sometimes power is a door that swings silently shut. Learning nights followed. Hunger had etiquette. Doors had rules. Mirrors returned a version of him that understood the way the world made edges around light and shadow. Sarah taught him how to fold the want into something like joy, how to taste without taking, how to step around soft hearts like they were altars. They argued too. "You saved me on your terms," he said once, angry for the first time without apology. "I saved you on reality's terms," she snapped back. "If the world were kinder, I'd have let you grow old and bitter and beautiful." They stared each other down across a table set with crystal, then laughed because they were still themselves under all this midnight. The map opened to them like a sea anemone daring a hand. Ships hummed into the dark beyond Novaterra, following braided light. The crystalline structures around a pale star unfurled like cathedrals in slow motion. Engines sang chords older than law. Jake felt the music on his teeth. Sarah listened with her whole body still as a blade. They made landfall, if one can land on light, and walked corridors that built themselves as they went. The repository recognized Sarah first, old blood calling to old design. It recognized Jake second, something in the way he solved a problem with elegance instead of force. Voices, not words, touched their minds. Readiness acknowledged, covenant required, cost declared. Sarah's hand found Jake's. "What do they want?" Jake asked. "What we already chose," she said, "to tie hunger to love, to make power answer to tenderness." He smiled, grim, amused. The universe is a moralist, who knew? They learned. They brought home engines that sipped starlight without breaking atmospheres. They taught human crews to listen, Valyrian crews to share. Jake negotiated in halls lit like frozen dawn. Sarah danced the knife line between mercy and sovereignty without bleeding. Rezek, tamed by usefulness, watched by everyone, ran logistics like a poet of crates. At a final gate, Valina's visage flickered. Hollow, regal even in light. "Emissary," she said to Jake. "What is your oath?" He said it without looking at Sarah, because if he looked, he'd say too much. "To return what we learn without breaking what we are." Valyria nodded once. Then go, and remember, the first law of night is restraint. Behind the law stood a woman who had turned him because she loved him. He'd obey for both of them. They could not marry in the court, with banners and vows and 100 eyes. They could do something better. On the eastern gallery under twin moons, with only the grid humming like a choir, Sarah held out a thin ring of comet glass. "We do not wear metal," she said, smiling. "It gets jealous." He gave her a band braided from fiber optic strands, a joke and a prayer. "It lights when you touch it," he said. "Like me." She snorted, indelicate, perfect, and then quieted. "Jake," she said, "I can't give you children. I can't give you daylight. I can give you centuries. I can give you the way a thing tastes when you want it and still choose to stop." He swallowed. "I can give you a man who remains a man. I can give you anger that learns how to stand down. I can give you the East Gallery for as long as the domes stand." They put rings on because symbols bind hearts better than laws do. They kiss because some nights require worship. "Hungry?" she whispered against his mouth. "Always," he said, and meant everything. Years, weird and sweet, unspooled. Jake learned to laugh with other turned emissaries he trained carefully, sparingly. Sarah learned to sleep while he watched, a trust more intimate than feeding. Valyrian aged without aging, a queen made of decisions. Rezik became useful against his will and found to his shock that usefulness soothed him. At the end of a long mission, returning with a reservoir of captured dawn to power half a planet, they stood again at the gallery as sunrise cut a vein of gold across the ridge. "I used to think turning would make you a storybook monster," Jake said. Sarah's smile put laugh lines where time couldn't. "What did it make me?" "Human," he said, "in the way that matters, choosing even when appetite argues." She leaned on him. "You begged me for years." "I did." "And when it came to it, you asked once." "I did." She laced their fingers. "Then here's our ending and our beginning. We'll keep asking the right questions once. We'll keep sacrificing the easy thing for the true thing. We'll keep walking the gallery at dusk until someone builds a better metaphor." He looked at the dawn the way a former man of daylight learns to look. Grateful, aware of loss, unbroken. "Together," he said. "Together," she answered. The grid sang, the rings glowed. The universe, moralist and mother, opened another door. They stepped through. Jake had grown used to the strange rhythm of his new existence, sleeping in pockets of quiet daylight behind sealed shutters, waking to the pulse of the grid at dusk, and walking beside Sarah in the half-light of Novaterra's twin moons. But tonight, the grid hummed wrong. It sounded uneven, like a heartbeat skipping. He paused on the observation bridge, fingers brushing the metal railing. "Hear that?" Sarah's golden eyes narrowed, a ripple shimmered along her skin. "I do. It's too fast. The grid doesn't panic." He almost smiled. "Unless something's making it." "Or someone," she murmured. They walked together toward the central chamber, but halfway down the hallway, Jake froze. A shard of crystalline glass pulsed on the floor, flickering with diluted blue light. It wasn't shattered, no cracks, no debris. It was placed. "It's a message," Jake said quietly. Sarah crouched beside him. Her touch hovered over the shard without making contact. "Not Valyrian. Not human." The shard pulsed once more and projected a faint symbol into the air, 3 interlocking spirals glowing like cold fire. Jake's blood chilled. He knew that pattern. "It's from the repository," he said, "but it's wrong, distorted." Sarah stood, her posture sharpening. "It means someone accessed it without authorization." Her voice flattened, controlled, but laced with fury. Jake's vampiric senses unfurled like wings. He listened to the grid, to the vibrations in the walls, to the distant movements of guards and engineers. Something crouched in the silence beneath the sound. "It means," he said, "that something we brought back from the crystalline engines is no longer quiet." Sarah's eyes darkened. "You think it followed us?" He wanted to say no. He couldn't. "Maybe it woke after we left. Maybe it waited." "Or," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, "maybe it chose someone else." Queen Valyrian rarely showed fear. Tonight? Fear stood in the corner of her eyes like an uninvited guest. She sat in her meditation cradle, the throne that wasn't, and watched holographic projections of the grid's fluctuating harmonics. Ministers murmured around her, but she ignored them. Jake and Sarah approached. "Your Majesty," Jake said. She looked up. "Emissary. Daughter." Her voice was cool, regal, but her fingers gripped the crystalline armrest too tightly. The grid sings conflict, something presses against its boundaries. The shard, Sarah said. A symbol from the repository. Valina's lips thinned. I feared as much. Lord Rezek stepped into view like a shadow finding light. Of course, the interference came precisely after our emissary returned from the crystalline domain. He smiled, soft, poisonous. Perhaps he brought a piece of the unknown that now wishes to speak. Jake held his ground. If something came through with us, we need to identify it, not blame each other. Rezek's smile deepened. Blame is how one maps responsibility, engineer. Sarah stepped closer to Jake, a clear show of siding. Responsibility will be assigned when we know more, not before. Rezek inclined his head, though his eyes glinted like steel. As you wish, Highness. Valina raised her hand. Silence fell. The grid speaks with an unfamiliar frequency. We must understand it. Jake drew the cube from his pocket. It pulsed, sharply, urgently, like a heart under threat. Sarah whispered, It's calling to something. Jake swallowed. No, something is calling to it. The cube's light flickered jaggedly, and then the grid screamed. Lights across the palace flared white-hot, then went black. Every voice in the room gasped. Jake's vision shifted instantly. His night-born senses painted the room in ghost-like clarity. He saw fear twist across Rezek's face. Sarah's hand was already on Jake's arm. Valina's voice cut through the dark. Shields, now! Emergency power flickered back on in dull crimson pulses. Jake felt the grid's vibration through the soles of his boots. He wasn't prepared for what he heard. A voice, not human, not Valyrian, threading itself through the energy lines like static, whispering words. It wasn't language, it was intent. Seek, seek, seek. Jake's mouth went dry. It's looking for something. Sarah's gaze locked with his. Or someone. Her mother's eyes narrowed. Daughter, emissary, what have you awoken? Jake didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. The cube in his hand throbbed like a captured star, burning with a signal that resonated across his bones. The power conduits above them crackled, then glowed with liquid blue light. The ministers backed away instinctively. Something moved inside the wires. A shape of light, vague but purposeful, slithered along the conduit like a serpent made of fractured code. Jake swallowed. That's not an energy surge. No, Sarah whispered. It's a presence. Rezek gasped. By the frozen moons, what have you brought into our palace, human? Jake ignored him. His eyes were locked on the thing. It's scanning. It's trying to attach. Attach to what? To who? Seek. The cube pulsed in response, bright, sharp, like a lighthouse at night. The light serpent turned. It saw the cube, it recognized it, and then it lunged. Jake's senses exploded. He threw the cube up instinctively. Sarah leapt between him and the conduit with terrifying grace, her body a shield. The serpent of light struck the cube with a sound like shattering glass and screaming metal. Blue sparks filled the room. Jake collapsed from the shock, clutching his skull as the cube's voice flooded him with data. He tasted colors. He heard light. He saw sound. Sarah was there instantly, her arms around him, anchoring him to reality. Breathe, Jake, breathe. He gasped, shaking. It knows me. It knows the map. It knows what the repository showed us. Valina stepped closer, her presence steady. What does it want? Jake lifted his head, eyes wide and glowing faintly with the cube's reflected light. His voice came out hoarse. It wants me. Sarah pulled him to a private alcove as guards began sealing the room. Her voice was sharp with fear. Real fear. Jake, what did it show you? Not show, he whispered, shaking. Merge. It tried to merge. Merge with your mind? Jake nodded. It wants information, the star map, the pathways, the harmonic signatures, everything we took from the crystalline engines. Sarah's grip tightened. It wants access to power. Yes, Jake said. Or maybe it needs it. Maybe it's wounded, damaged, alone. Sarah stared at him with a mixture of horror and awe. Jake, you're empathizing with a parasite. He shook his head. No, it's not parasitic. It's lost. She stepped back, studying him as if she were learning a new language written across his skin. You're turning, she whispered. It amplified you. Your instincts, your empathy. Your mind can hear things now that even we cannot. Jake frowned, frustrated. I don't want to hear it, but I do. It's dangerous, Sarah said. It could twist you. It could use you. Jake met her gaze. Or I could help it. No. Sarah? No, she said more forcefully. You just came back to me. You survived the turning. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for a creature we do not understand. Jake sighed. I'm not human or Valyrian anymore. I'm something in between. If anything can communicate with that thing, it's me. Sarah's eyes shimmered. This is why I didn't want to turn you. This exactly. He touched her cheek, thumb brushing the faint cold glow beneath her skin. I'm still me. She closed her eyes, leaning into his palm. And I am still terrified of losing you. Valyria entered the alcove. No guards, no ceremony. Emissary, she said, voice low. The presence has begun propagating throughout the palace grid. It will reach the colony in minutes. Jake froze. Spreading? Valyria nodded. It is scanning for something it knows exists. It will not stop. Sarah's hand found Jake's. She squeezed hard. Tell her. Jake swallowed. I believe it's searching for the star map, for coordinates. I believe it came from the crystalline domain originally and got separated or corrupted. Valyria considered. And you think you can speak to it? Jake nodded slowly. Yes, but not through the cube. Through me. Sarah's voice turned sharp. Mother, forbid this. Valyria's gaze softened. A rare thing. Daughter, sometimes a crown must allow what a heart cannot bear. Jake met her eyes. I need access to the central grid interface. Valyria stepped aside. Take what you need. Sarah spun on her. He will die. Valyria met her daughter's fury with unbroken calm. Then we will grieve the world that demanded the cost. Jake stepped between them. Sarah, I survived the turning. I survived the corridor. I survived myself. Let me do this. She tore her hand away. If you die, I follow you into the dark. Do you understand that? His throat tightened. Their covenant wasn't metaphor. It was blood and law and heart. I understand, he whispered. And I will not ask that of you. She stared at him, eyes full of centuries of longing and fear. At last she said, then I walk with you. Into whatever this is. The central grid chamber throbbed with neon blue lines, alive and dangerous. Conduits cracked with static. Engineers stood aside, terrified. Jake approached the interface, cube in hand. The light serpent sensed him and coiled along the conduits, flickering with intelligence. Seek, seek. Jake spoke softly, letting his new senses open like petals. What are you? The grid answered with a scream of light. He saw flashes, broken images, fragmented memories, a crystalline world dissolving in heat, voices pleading, a matrix shattering apart, something escaping through a rift. Alone, alone, alone. Jake staggered. Sarah caught his arm. It's not hostile, he gasped. It's desperate. It's the last echo of something ancient that survived by clinging to energy. Sarah whispered, a remnant, a soul with no body. Valyria's eyes widened. A displaced intelligence. Jake nodded. It doesn't know what it is anymore. It only remembers it needs home. The presence surged, light arcing across the walls. Jake stepped forward, raising the cube. If you want home, he whispered, then talk to me. The chamber darkened. The serpent lunged straight into him. Pain slammed through Jake like molten iron. His thoughts fractured. Voices, memories, patterns. He felt swallowed by galaxies and screams. Sarah shouted his name. He couldn't hear her. He felt the presence sliding through him, searching, desperate. He didn't resist. He guided. Here, he thought. Here is the map. He opened his mind. Not all of it, but enough. Enough for the intelligence to see coordinates, pathways, harmonics. And then, silence. The serpent withdrew, shrinking into a spindle of light. It shaped itself into a symbol, the 3 spirals. Then it drifted into the cube, disappearing like a sigh. The grid returned to normal. Jake collapsed. Sarah caught him before his head hit the floor. He woke hours later in their private quarters. Sarah sat beside him, her eyes swollen with tears she would never admit shedding. Hi, he whispered. She punched his shoulder, gently. Idiot. Brave idiot, but still idiot. He smiled. Did we win? Define win, she said, voice cracking. You let an alien ghost use your brain as a corridor. He reached for her hand. She let him take it, but her grip was trembling. Is it gone? She asked. Jake shook his head slowly. No, it's sleeping, inside the cube, waiting. Sarah's eyes widened. For what? Jake swallowed. For the journey home. Valyria arrived later, regal and quiet. The intelligence is stable? Jake nodded. Contained, for now. Valyria's gaze sharpened. Then our next course is clear. We return to the crystalline domain. We find what remains of its origin, and we return it to its people, if any still exist. Sarah whispered, a pilgrimage. Jake nodded, a reckoning. Valyria placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of respect. Emissary Morrison, you have bridged mind and light, now bridge worlds. Jake met Sarah's gaze. She nodded, together, always.